Moving on to My Adventures with Superman. Did you manage to check out the last two episodes?
I didn't, but I am gonna watch them today when I do my binge watching because I have a lot of stuff to catch up on.
Okay, well, I'm loving Lois's characterization as being too hungry and reckless of a reporter, and constantly getting herself and Clark and Jimmy into trouble because of it. And the build up to Lois and Clark's relationship is really good so far. Um, but I'm afraid that Jimmy might mess it up somehow out of jealousy of being a third wheel. But we'll see. Um, yeah, the rest of this I can't talk about, but I will talk about. Wait, you haven't seen the third episode at all?
Mm-mm, no.
Dang. Well, okay, I'm gonna have to be ambiguous about this then. Um, you know what? I actually can talk about the first two episodes because they do it in the first two episodes too. 4 episodes in, this show has one major problem for me, and that is that the villains suck. The reason the villains suck for me, and the reason the villains are the weakest part of the show, is because it feels like they're trying way too hard to make them different, and in the process, removing their character. The electric villain that shows up in the first two episodes was Livewire, a villain who debuted in Superman the Animated Series and then eventually made her way into the comics, similar to how Harley Quinn did with Batman the Animated Series. Um,
Right.
she was in Superman Animated Series. She was a radio personality who thrived on fake news and outrage, and that made her an interesting foil for both Superman, Clark, and Lois. Superman's
Right.
truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. And Lois and Clark, they're just reporters in general. So naturally, they
Right.
work in finding out the truth about things. And she's also just a perfect villain for the modern day. They could have made her a podcast host, like an Alex Jones parody, where she's just using all this fake news and outrage to get attention to her content. Um,
Right.
and instead, they made her this generic arms dealer who gets turned into a superhuman by some technological mishap, which is like one of the most basic supervillain origins in the book.
Right. Ooh, that's boring.
And like, oh yeah, you know what? Let me send you a picture of what Livewire. Actually, no, you just Google Livewire.
Okay. Okay.
Google Superman Livewire. You're gonna be so upset at how good she looks and
What?
how exactly
What?
she looks
That
so
is
good.
asinine.
So it's not much of a spoiler to talk about the villain that shows up in the episode after that, but I'm not going to spoil the latest episode. There's a
Okay.
character that shows up named Banshee. Her power, at least in the show, they make it seem like her only power is supersonic scream, similar to something like Black Canary.
Hmm.
But that's not true. The thing about this is that they don't say it, they haven't said it yet, but it's very clear that all these characters are getting their powers from Kryptonian technology that probably came to
Right.
Earth when Superman crash landed. Um,
Right. Right. Right.
and that trend continues with every single villain. The thing is, in the comics, Silver Banshee is a actual, literal, magical banshee.
Hmm.
And her powers don't just stop at supersonic scream. Her scream literally sucks the life out of people, but also she can't kill you with her scream unless she knows your first and last name, and she can possess people like a ghost.
Her
And she
design is super neat.
who's it, Silver Banshee?
Yeah.
Yeah, she looks cool. You're gonna be so disappointed when you watch that episode.
Oh boy.
And the
Oh
sad part
boy.
is, and I don't blame it on him, because I know it's more so, it was probably what he was told to design around. It was probably like the restrictions he had. But the GOAT, Chris Enka, who designed Spider-Man 2099 for Across the Spider-Verse, and as well as, spoiler alert, actually I'm not going to say who it is, but the character that shows up at the very end. He designed a lot of characters for that movie just in general. Chris Enka,
God.
he did a lot of designs for this show. And I'm mad because I discovered him through just some random, like just his own fan art of coming up with designs for Wonder Woman. That's how I discovered him, and he has some of my favorite Wonder Woman designs I've ever seen in my life. Um, so I know he could do really good um, designs for DC characters, and I feel like they just restricted his creativity, because I know he would have came up with the dopest Silver Banshee and Livewire designs in the history of man.
Right.
But I'll save what I'm going to say about this next villain for next episode. All I'll say is that they combine two villains that have absolutely nothing to do with each other, and I hate it. Like I said, this show's good, but the reason I don't like this is because other than Lex Luthor, Doomsday, Darkseid, oh, and Brainiac, other than those four villains, can you name any other Superman villains?
No.
Exactly. Nobody, especially the general audience, knows Superman's villains well enough for them to decide that they should change them so significantly. I'm not saying they can't change them at all. Like for example, the way Livewire becomes, gets her electric powers in the comics is that she's doing a live show, and there's a thunderstorm starts happening. The stage gets electrocuted. She gets powers. Very goofy comic book stuff. And in this, she gets it from some alien technology. I think that's a better version of it, actually. It makes more sense that she gets it from alien technology rather than just she gets struck by lightning and some reason that gives her superpowers. But that's fine. But taking away the magical aspect of silver magic, that's boring. And also
Right.
taking away the entire very interesting and very topical backstory of Livewire is boring. I feel like they're really good with the relationships between Clark and Lois and Jimmy and all of those interpersonal relationships, but I feel like they suck at writing villains and that they just want to put their own stamp on these characters, but it's like not enough people know these characters well enough for you to be changing them so significantly, and you're changing them for the worse. It'd be different if you were changing them for the better, but they're not. It just saddens me, and it's already a thing that people think that Superman has boring villains, which just isn't the case. People just don't know his villains. It's not that they're boring. You think this character has existed for almost 100 years without any interesting characters outside of the four that I just named? Of course not.
Right.
And yeah, um, I hope they do better with the villains in the future, but I don't think they will. Um,